The Mafia boss wanted revenge until he saw the scars hidden under her sweater. Nico had seen violence before. He had ordered it, survived it, and buried people because of it. But when Vivian lifted her sweater and showed him the old silver scars, the fresh marks, and the round burns on her arm, something inside him went cold. These were not accidents. They were a record. A long, patient record of cruelty delivered by the same man Nico thought he had already destroyed. Graham Blackwell hadn't just murdered Nico's brother. He had spent years turning his own daughter into a weapon of Fia. All right, open case file 742 because this one begins in a room where every expensive thing is failing to hide the smell of panic. Nico Moretti stands inside a Manhattan penthouse with low lights, spilled bourbon, and a dying man trying to smile through fear. Graham Blackwell is broke, cornered, and still polished enough to sound civilized. He speaks gently, almost sadly, as if this is a family tragedy instead of a criminal collapse. Then he makes his final offer. Not money, not land, his daughter Vivian. And the way he says her name tells Nico one thing. Graham still believes people can be owned. To understand why Nico came here, you have to know about Marco. Marco Moretti was 26 when he was killed. Too trusting for a world where trust gets priced and sold. Blackwell had played the refined mentor for months, with calm advice, expensive manners, and the kind of warmth that made people lower their guard. Mugging. And $4 million vanished with him. Nico did not mourn the way normal people mourn. He tracked transfers, calls, and lies. 11 months later, he is in Blackwell's penthouse, with the face of a man who has already decided how this night ends. Blackwell denies it at first. His voice is thin, but the performance is still impressive. The offended gentleman, the grieving associate, the businessman wounded by false accusations. His hand shakes around a glass of scotch, yet his smile stays soft, almost fatherly. Nico lets him talk long enough to show exactly how practiced the lie is. Then he lays out the proof, recorded calls, emails, wire transfers, and the name of the man who pulled the trigger. Blackwell stops blinking. Nico does not raise his voice. He does not need to. The colder he sounds, the more the room belongs to him. Nico stands 6 feet away, close enough for Blackwell to feel the threat. Far enough to prove he is not rushing. One by one, he takes away everything Blackwell still thinks can save him. An offshore has been flagged. The private jet will be grounded by morning. The foreign properties are already being seized. Blackwell's face changes with every sentence. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It empties slowly, like a man watching the walls of his life come apart and realizing there is no secret door behind them. Blackwell lowers his glass with a careful hand, trying to make trembling look deliberate. There has to be a reasonable solution, he says, almost tenderly, as if Nico is the emotional one. He offers names, accounts, favors, quiet introductions to men who still think power means immunity. Nico refuses all of it. That is when Blackwell reaches for the thing Nico does not expect, his daughter. Vivian is 22, he says, educated, beautiful, untouched by his business, easy to guide. He presents her like a merger proposal, and for the first time that night, even Nico's expression hardens with disgust. Blackwell insists Vivian will obey. He says it softly, almost regretfully, like a father explaining a difficult duty instead of selling his child. She understands family, he murmurs. She always has. Nico hears the threat hidden inside the warmth. Still, his mind is locked on Marco, on the call records, on the 11 months of rage that brought him here. He should reject the offer. A cleaner man would. But Nico has not been clean in a long time. A new punishment forming. Vivian is innocent, but in that moment he refuses to look at her as a person. So Nico says yes. Not because he wants a wife. Not because he wants Blackwell's name beside his. Man breathe again. And Nico wants to be there when that hope dies. Convinces himself the marriage is justice. A way to make Blackwell watch his own blood trapped inside the consequences of his crimes. It sounds almost elegant in Nico's head, which is how he knows he is standing somewhere dangerous. Cruel plans often sound clean when grief is the one writing them. By the time he leaves, Graham Blackwell believes he has bought time. He has not. 6 days later, the wedding is already happening inside a sleek Tribeca event space built from marble, glass, and money. The flowers are white. The music is soft. Nothing about the room feels warm. Nico stands at the altar beside Sal Cabrero, his underboss, a scarred 47-year-old man who has survived too many wars to mistake silence for peace. Nico looks calm. He even looks bored. But under the tailored suit, revenge is humming through him. He thinks this is the cleanest move he has made. He does not know yet that the bride is about to ruin the shape of his plan. The guests are there because power told them to come. Judges, former mayors, a senator who has owed Nico favors for 9 years. They smile like this is a respectable ceremony, but no one speaks too loudly. Everyone understands the room is not built on love. It is built on leverage. Blackwell sits near the front, pale and sweating, playing father of the bride with a smile so gentle, it almost convinces strangers. Nico watches him more than the aisle at first. He wants to see regret. He wants to see fear. Then the doors open and Vivian Blackwell walks in. Nico is ready to hate her. He expects a spoiled Manhattan heiress, fragile, dramatic, trained to cry in silk and diamonds. Instead, Vivian enters like someone walking toward a sentence she has already heard. Her white dress is simple, almost too simple for the room. Her dark hair is pinned back without fuss. Her face is calm but not soft. There is no tantrum, no pleading, no collapse. She keeps her eyes forward and her shoulders still. For the first time, Nico's plan misses a beat. Not look like a prize. She looks like someone trying not to give her enemies anything. Watch the way she moves. Vivienne seems smaller inside the dress, as if she has learned that taking up less space keeps you safer. She does not look at the guests. She does not look at the flowers, the cameras, or the man waiting at the altar. Her face has the stillness of someone who has practiced not reacting. Beside her, Graham wears a proud father's smile, warm enough for the room, and sharp enough for her alone. Nico notices the distance between them. Then Graham touches her elbow. Vivienne flinches. Nico sees it. The flinch changes something in the room for Nico, though he refuses to name it. Her spine tightens before she can stop it. Her eyes sharpen for half a second. Then the mask returns. The ceremony itself is short, cold, and efficient, a contract disguised as vows. As soon as the papers are signed, Nico leans close enough for only her to hear. "Welcome to your new prison," he whispers. He expects fear, maybe tears, at least a tremor. Vivian turns her dark eyes on him, and there is nothing easy there. No panic, no surprise. Only the tired recognition of someone who has heard worse. For 2 full seconds, they look at each other. Nico waits for her to break. She does not. During the reception, Vivian stays alert. She barely touches the food, refuses champagne, and keeps her hands folded neatly in her lap whenever someone approaches. She is polite to Sal, polite to the senator, polite even to guests who study her like gossip wrapped in white satin. Nico becomes irritated because she is not performing the role he wrote for her. He wanted a victim he could frighten into pieces. Vivian gives him courtesy, distance, and nothing else. The drive to Long Island lasts 40 minutes and feels longer. Outside, streetlights slide over the windows. Inside, the car is silent except for the low hum of the engine. Nico finally speaks, trying to recover the control that felt so simple before she walked down the aisle. "You should understand what this arrangement looks like going forward." Vivian keeps looking out the window. "I assumed it was not a marriage," she says. Her voice is quiet, almost flat. Nico studies her profile. There is no sarcasm in it. No fear either. Just a woman naming the truth before he can weaponize it. Nico explains the rules. She will live in his 30-room mansion, but only in one wing. No calls, no internet. No contact with Graham. She will be protected, watched, and contained. He expects anger. Instead, Vivian nods as if he has told her the weather. Then she asks, "Did he owe you a great deal?" The question catches him harder than it should. "More than money," Nico says. Vivian looks down at her wedding ring, then back at the window. He usually does. The way she says it makes the air shift. Not shock. Not betrayal. Recognition. The Moretti estate looks less like a home than a fortress with good architecture. Security lights flood the lawn. Cameras follow every angle. Guards move in clean patterns along the drive. Nico leads Vivian through the grand foyer with controlled politeness, the kind that feels closer to ownership than kindness. He introduces Elena, the housekeeper, and shows Vivian to a room prepared in the East Wing. Everything inside is expensive, tasteful, and impersonal. Vivian steps in and pauses. Her eyes move first to the windows, then the doors, then the distance between the bed and the nearest exit. Nico notices. He wishes he had not. Vivian is not looking at the room like a bride. She is measuring it. Window locks, balcony height, closet depth, bathroom door, every possible blind spot. She does it quietly, without turning her head too much. But Nico has spent his life reading people who lie for survival. He recognizes assessment when he sees it. Downstairs later, he tells himself she is exactly where she belongs. A pawn moved into position, an asset secured, but the house feels different with her inside it. He stops twice outside his office, listening to silence from the East Wing, and hating that he notices it. Bankrupting Graham Blackwell was supposed to be the beginning. Marrying Vivian was supposed to make the punishment personal. Nico had expected someone easy to crush, someone whose fear would feel like victory. Instead, he keeps remembering the flinch at the altar and the way she asked about debt in the car. She knows too much about being traded, too much about rooms with rules. Midnight, Nico is still awake, standing at the window of his office while the estate sleeps around him. The revenge is moving exactly as planned, but somewhere inside those walls, Vivian Blackwell is not behaving like a pawn. At sunrise, Nico retreats into routine. Routine is clean. Numbers are clean. Blackwell-esque collapses clean on paper. Frozen accounts, seized properties, broken alliances. Men calling in panic because they have just learned loyalty is expensive. Nico reviews every report with brutal focus. Still, Vivian keeps slipping into the margins of his mind. The way she stood at the altar. The way she did not ask what would happen to her. The way she reacted to Graham's hand before she could hide it. Nico closes the folder harder than necessary. He reminds himself what Marco looked like in the morgue. That memory still works. Later, Dex, his head of security, refers to Vivian as a guest. Nico snaps before he can stop himself. She is not a guest. She is a business asset. The room goes quiet. Dex lowers his eyes and corrects himself. Nico returns to the screen, but the words stay in his mouth like something bitter. By 7 that evening, he has already broken his own rule. He goes upstairs, telling himself it is a routine check. Nothing more. The hallway outside Viviana's room is silent. He knocks once and enters before he can think too much about why he came. Without the wedding dress, Vivian looks younger, but not softer. She is sitting near the window with a book, unopened, beside her, and a glass of water untouched on the table. The room has barely changed since she entered it. No clothing thrown over chairs, no perfume on the vanity. No sign that she believes any of this belongs to her. Nico asks whether the room is acceptable. The question sounds ridiculous the moment it leaves his mouth. Vivian looks at him, not at the furniture. She studies his face, the way someone studies weather before deciding whether to run. The room is fine, she says. I have had worse. Nico does not answer immediately. She says it without drama, which makes it worse. Prison. Meant to humiliate her. But how do you punish someone who already expects captivity? Vivian folds her hands in her lap and adds, being useful is not new to me. Nico feels the plan shift under his feet. He came upstairs to remind her of her position. Instead, she has reminded him of something he did not want to know. Graham had been using her long before Nico arrived. Before he leaves, Nico tells her to sleep. It is not an order exactly, though it still sounds like one. Vivian nods. He steps back into the hallway and shuts the door softly, then stands there for a second longer than he should. Downstairs, he pours bourbon and does not drink it. The house is quiet, too quiet. Near midnight, a sound cuts through the silence from the second floor, faint, choked. Nico is moving before he has fully decided to move. Already halfway down the corridor when another broken breath reaches him. He opens Vivian's door and finds her on the floor, curled against the wall as if she has tried to fold herself out of existence. Her eyes are open, dry and unfocused. She is not crying. That unsettles him more than tears would have. Her body is rigid, one hand pressed hard against the baseboard, the other gripping her own wrist. Nico says her name. No response. He lowers his voice and says it again. Vivian blinks once slowly, like she is returning from somewhere far away and not by choice. I am fine, she says. The words are too fast, too practiced, and completely unconvincing. She drags herself upright with the wall, hiding pain with a speed that feels trained. Nico reaches out and stops before touching her. Something about the way she freezes tells him contact would be a mistake. You are not fine, he says. Vivian's face goes blank. Not defiant, not afraid. Nico understands that her calm at the wedding was not strength in the simple sense. It was a habit, a survival mechanism, a door closing from the inside. He takes her to the kitchen because it is the only room in the house that does not feel like a threat. Elena is gone for the night. The long table sits under soft lights, too large for two people who do not know how to speak honestly. Nico makes coffee mostly to keep his hands busy. Vivian sits with both feet tucked under the chair, shoulders tight, watching every movement. He places bread, fruit, and eggs in front of her. She eats slowly, carefully, like someone who has learned that taking too much of anything can become a problem later. Nico asks about the nightmares. Vivian does not pretend to misunderstand. Often enough, she says. A long silence follows. Then, without looking at him, she tells him Graham contacted her 4 days before the wedding. Not shout. He sounded tired, gentle, almost loving. He told her she would marry Nico, behave properly, and protect the family name. If she refused, he would destroy what little life she had been allowed to keep. Her apartment, her college record, her access to money. He was always kindest, she says, right before he took something away. She says she spent most of her life trying not to make her father angry. The sentence lands in the kitchen like a dropped blade. Nico starts seeing the details he had dismissed or filed away. The flinch at Graham's hand, the way she measured exits, the calm response to imprisonment, the way she speaks of herself as if usefulness is a category of survival. He asks the question before he can make it gentler. How long has he been hurting you? Vivian's fingers still around the cup. She says nothing. The silence answers anyway. Nico makes a decision he did not plan for. He orders Dex to change the lock on Vivian's door so it locks from the inside. No one enters without her permission. Not staff, not security, not Nico himself. Vivian looks at him with real confusion. Why? She asks. Nico has no clean answer. No speech that makes him look better than he is. And the honesty surprises them both. His phone rings before the moment can go further. An informant reports Graham is moving, packing, and looking for a way to reach the border. Nico does not sleep after that. By morning, every instruction in the house has changed. Vivian is to be treated with respect. She is not to be cornered, touched, questioned, or watched inside her private rooms, nor is that order answers to him personally. Then he turns back to Graham. Screens fill his office with maps, account activity, travel patterns, and surveillance feeds. Blackwell is scrambling through the wreckage of his empire, still convinced he can buy one more escape route. Nico watches him move from safe house to contact to burner phone. But one encrypted call makes Nico pause. Graham is not only running, he is planning something else. On the third floor, Vivian sits alone in a room that still does not feel like hers. She rubs an old scar at her wrist until the skin turns red. Nico enters later and asks directly whether Graham abused her. Her composure holds for a few seconds. Then it cracks. Terror flashes across her face before she whispers yes. One word. Nothing dramatic, nothing polished, but it changes the room. Nico had spent 11 months turning himself into a weapon for Marco. Now another truth stands in front of him, breathing, wounded, and waiting to see what kind of man he will become next. Nico asks to see the proof, then immediately regrets how harsh the request sounds. Vivian studies him for a long moment. Then she removes her sweater with hands steadier than his. Her eyes go distant as she does it, fixed somewhere beyond the wall. This is not trust yet. It is calculation. Evidence, a survivor deciding what must be shown. Nico stays very still. He knows enough not to step closer, and grows heavy. And when the fabric slips from her shoulders, the air seems to leave with it. The marks on her skin are not vague, not accidental, not the kind of injuries a person can explain away with clumsiness. Faded silver scars crossed her shoulders. Newer, darker burns sit near them. Nico's stomach turned cold. Those were made with patience, with intention, with someone close enough to watch her reaction. Nico has seen violence in alleys, offices, warehouses, and war rooms. This is different. This is private cruelty, controlled cruelty, the kind that does not happen because a man loses control, but because he enjoys having it. Vivian's breathing barely changes. That is what frightens Nico most. She has learned to leave herself behind when her body becomes evidence. When he asks when it began, she says she was 15. The newest burns came 3 weeks before the wedding. She says it like she is giving dates from a file. Nico's anger rises so fast he has to step back from it. He wants to break something. He wants to find Graham and make the old man feel every second. But Vivian is standing in front of him, and his anger is not what she needs, so he forces himself still. He asks why no one helped. Vivian gives a small, humorless breath. At 17, an aunt tried to intervene and was cut out of the family so completely. Her name stopped being spoken. At 16, a teacher noticed bruises and filed a report. She was fired within a week. A doctor asked questions once. Graham changed doctors, then sent flowers to the clinic with a handwritten apology for the misunderstanding. Every hand that reached toward Vivian was punished, removed, or charmed into silence. That was Graham's true talent. He did not only hurt her, he made the world doubt what it saw. When she turned 20, Graham bought her an apartment and paid for college. From the outside, it looked generous. Vivian understood the truth. The apartment was a leash with better furniture. Tuition was a lock. Money was the language Graham used when shouting would leave too much evidence. If she displeased him, he could take everything away and leave her nowhere to go. Nico listens without interrupting. The room feels colder now. He had thought of Blackwell as a thief and a murderer. That was already enough. But this is something lower, uglier, and much harder to keep separate from Vivian's face. Nico tells her she is safe now. Vivian does not soften. If anything, she becomes more guarded. Because you say so, she asks. The question is not cruel. It is practical. Her father used calm voices too. Her father promised protection too. Her father called control love, generosity, family duty, whatever word fit the room. Nico opens his mouth, then closes it. There is nothing he can say that would make 22 years disappear. For once, he does not try. No, he admits, not because I say so. Vivian watches him closely, waiting for the manipulation hidden under the honesty. It does not come. What happens to me next? She asks. It is not a logistical question. Nico hears the fear beneath it. Freedom to Vivian is not an open door. It is an unfamiliar room with no map. While she tries to imagine a future without Graham's hand closing around it, Graham himself is preparing to run. Reports arrive from Nico's people, vehicles moving, cash pulled, contacts activated. The old man is not waiting for dawn. He is preparing to disappear into whatever country still welcomes men with hidden money and no conscience. Then Reyes sends one more update. Graham has asked about Vivian. Nico tells Vivian she will get to choose. She looks at him, as if he has spoken in a language she almost remembers. "No one has ever told me that before," she says. The room goes quiet around the sentence. Nico retreats to his office afterward and stares at 72 hours of data on Graham Blackwell. His screens show routes, accounts, aliases, license plates, and private aviation requests. Usually, information steadies him. Tonight, it does not. Vivian's words keep returning between the numbers. "No one has ever told me that before." He hates Graham for Marco. Now he hates him for something else too. Nico is in his late father's old conference room. Pull up satellite footage of Graham hiding in a cheap Montclair rental with 2 guards from a Washington security firm. The place is ugly, temporary, and beneath him, which is probably why Graham thinks no one will look there. Reyes points out that Newark Airport is 22 minutes away. Nico shakes his head. Not commercial. Graham is too vain for a crowded terminal and too afraid for routine security. Somewhere nearby, a private exit is waiting. Nico studies the screen and finds the pattern. The charter route appears an hour later, hidden through a Cayman shell company, then onward to Reykjavik and Zurich. Graham is waiting until he believes the pressure has shifted elsewhere. Carver says he feels safe because he thinks Nico has already taken everything worth taking. That is exactly what Nico wanted him to think. For 6 weeks, he has left 4 hidden accounts untouched. More than $14 million waiting like bait. Graham will reach for them when he runs. The moment he does, Nico will know. But when Reyes pulls the passenger manifest, there is one empty seat no one can explain. Then Sal suggests using Vivian. Not hurting her, he says quickly. Just pressuring her, asking what she knows, seeing whether Graham has any old emergency habits she remembers. The room stills. Nico turns slowly. No, Sal holds his gaze for a second too long. She may know something. Nico's voice drops. Vivian is off limits. The name lands heavily, because everyone hears the difference. Not the girl, not the asset. Vivian. Carver looks down at his notes. Reyes pretends to adjust a file. Sal says nothing, but his expression makes clear that he has noticed exactly what has changed. They pivot to Weston, a money manager with enough fear and debt to become useful. The plan is simple: feed Graham a false warning, make him panic, and force him toward the hidden accounts early. When the meeting breaks, Sal stays behind. He waits until the door closes. "She is getting into your head," he says. Nico reaches for anger because anger is easier than answering. "Use her name." Sal's eyebrow shifts. That correction says more than either man needs to say out loud. "Fine," Sal says. "Vivian is getting into your head. And if Graham sees that before you do, he will use it." After Sal leaves, Nico remains alone with the security feed from the East Wing hallway. He tells himself he is checking procedure. Then the image changes to Vivian in the library, seated near a tall window with a book open in her lap. She is not reading quickly. She keeps looking up at every sound. The camera catches her sleeve sliding back just enough to reveal the circular burns on her arm. Nico shuts off the feed. He spent 11 months making revenge clean in his mind. Graham killed Marco. Graham must pay. Simple. But Vivian has made the truth messier, and Nico cannot unsee it. At noon, Elena reports that Vivian has been in the library since 9. She has not asked for anything except tea. Nico almost asks whether she seems frightened, then stops himself. The question would reveal too much in front of staff. He asks anyway. Elena answers carefully. "She seems tired, sir, but calmer than yesterday." Nico nods and dismisses her. Alone, he thinks about the library, about a woman hiding inside books, because the rest of the house still belongs to the man who took her. He opens Graham's financial file again, but another question keeps pressing at him. Why did Graham's escape plan leave one seat empty? At 4 in the afternoon, Reyes brings the update they were waiting for. Weston delivered the false warning. Graham panicked. The private flight has been moved up to 2 days from now. His encryption is old, his route exposed, and his remaining money will be frozen exactly 8 hours before takeoff. Nico orders the timing twice because timing is everything. Too early, Graham changes course. Too late, he disappears. Carver asks whether Nico wants to be there when the freeze hits. Nico looks at the flight map. "I want to be there," when he understands he has nowhere left to go. At 6, Nico goes to the library. Vivian is reading or pretending to. This time she does not flinch when he enters. That should please him. Instead, it cuts strangely. She has grown calm in his house, because it is, for the moment, less terrifying than the man who raised her. Nico tells her the threat will be gone in 48 hours. Vivian closes the book with one finger marking the page. "I stopped believing in finished things a long time ago," she says. Nico wants to promise her this one will be different, but the words feel too dangerous to offer. He tries facts instead. Graham is exposed. His accounts are flagged. His contacts are folding. Federal pressure is already building. And looks at him with a precision that makes lying useless. You are going yourself, she says. Nico does not ask how she knows. She has spent her life reading men who hide violence behind calm faces. Marco, she adds softly. His brother's name changes the air between them. Nico's jaw tightens before he can stop it. Vivian sees that too. I'm sorry, she says, not politely. Not because it is expected. And that is what makes it difficult to bear. Nico tries to retreat behind business, calls to make, men to coordinate, a trap to close. But at the door, Vivienne stops him. Thank you, she says. He turns back. For what? She looks down at the book, then at him. The kitchen, the lock. Not touching me when you could have. The list is small, and because it is small, it hurts. Nico is close enough to see the pulse jump at her throat, close enough to reach for her. And he does not. Then his phone cuts through the quiet. Dex's message is short enough to freeze the room. Perimeter breach, east wall. Dex reports 3 armed men on the property. Instantly, he grabs Vivian by the wrist, then catches himself and shifts his hand to her sleeve instead. Move, he says. The disturbing part is how quickly she obeys. No scream, no questions. Her body follows danger before her mind can ask permission. Nico feels the old training in her response like a bruise, but there is no time to stop. He pulls her through the inner library door, away from the windows, keeping her low. As security shutters begin dropping across the glass behind them, the estate becomes a machine around them. Doors lock. Lights shift. Guards move through corridors with weapons drawn. Nico keeps Vivian behind him as Dex's voice feeds updates through his earpiece. 2 intruders down near the east lawn. 1 still moving. Breach point confirmed at the water boundary. Camera blind spot exploited. Nico stops walking for half a second. That blind spot has existed for only 3 weeks. Only a handful of people know about it. Vivian watches his face, and he sees her understand before he says it. This was not random. Someone inside the system helped them. Vivian remains almost frighteningly composed. The leak is internal, she says. Nico looks at her. You are sure? She nods. My father would never send men blind. He needs certainty. Before Nico can answer, Dex rushes in with another update. The 3rd intruder has been captured in the East Garden, alive and carrying papers with Nico's name on them. Nico leaves Martinez wounded but steady to guard Vivian. He goes outside into the rain-slick garden to see the man himself. The intruder is face down, zip-tied, breathing carefully through pain like a professional. Dex hands Nico a waterproof sleeve. Inside is a typed sheet listing Vivian's movements for the day. Breakfast refused, library at 9, tea at 11, still in library by 6. There's also a meeting point marked in neat black ink. Library, 6 p.m. Nico's grip tightens on the plastic. This was not an assassination attempt. It was a retrieval. The sleeve also holds 8 photographs of Vivian near the window, taken from outside the property. In each one, she is unaware, reading, standing, turning her head. Graham had been watching what he still believed belonged to him. Nico questions the captured man, but he gives nothing. No name, no employer, no route, no price. His silence is trained or bought or both. Nico takes the burner phone from his wet jacket and goes back inside. Vivian is standing near the kitchen doorway, with her arms folded tightly around herself. Martinez is beside her, one hand bandaged, eyes on the hall. She reads Nico's face before he speaks. He came for me, she says. Nico does not soften the truth. Yes, her face does not crumple. It closes, and somehow that is worse. Vivian's anger is quiet when it comes. He never gives anything away, she says. He only loans it until he wants it back. Nico hears the years inside that sentence, and that she is staying protected. Vivian looks at him as if she wants to believe that, but does not know where belief is supposed to begin. Then Nico says the thing he has been avoiding. You matter to me. The words land badly and honestly at the same time. Vivian goes still. Captor, protector, threat, possible refuge. Nico can see all those names moving behind her eyes. In the war room, Sal, Carver, Reyes, and Dex break down the breach. No one wastes time pretending this was luck. The east wall camera gap was known. Vivian's schedule was known. The water approach was known. Nico brings up Montella Security, the contractor who has maintained the estate system for 8 years. Sal curses under his breath. 8 years is long enough for loyalty to rot quietly if the money is right. Reyes starts pulling access logs. Carver checks vendor traffic. Nico watches the data load, already knowing the answer before it appears. The confirmation arrives within minutes. Montella Security has been leaking updates for 18 months. Not only camera maps, maintenance schedules, guard rotations, vulnerability reports. Graham was not merely running and studying Nico while Nico studied him. The realization changes the room. Nico had believed he controlled the board. Graham had been moving pieces from the shadows the entire time. Sal looks at him with a grim kind of warning. He will move faster now. Nico nods. Then we make sure every road he chooses leads where we want it to. Because the retrieval failed, Graham will rush. Men like him cannot tolerate losing control. Nico maps every exit within 90 minutes. Newark private airstrips, marina routes, corporate hangars, medical evacuation services, diplomatic contacts that may still owe favors. He assigns teams without raising his voice. Pressure makes criminals impatient. Impatience leaves trails. Graham is desperate, but desperation can still be dangerous if it is funded and informed. Nico's own anger is no longer clean either. Marco is still there. Vivian is now there too. And somewhere outside the estate, Graham still has at least one friend, close enough to open doors. In the kitchen, Vivian sits with a mug between both hands. Her face is pale with guilt. Nico tells her what they found. Graham planned to take her back before the wedding ever happened. He handed her over with a hidden line attached, waiting to pull when the time came. Vivian looks down. I told him about the library, she whispers. Nico's eyes sharpen. When? Her jaw trembles. 4 days after the wedding. Refun, he called. She says the word called like it is a confession. Nico says her name, but she is already shaking her head. Graham had not threatened her directly. That was the worst part. He sounded warm, almost tired, like a father trying to repair something. Nico treated her badly. Whether the estate was secure, he made the questions feel harmless. Vivian mentioned the library, because it was the only room where she felt able to breathe. She mentioned the east side because he asked about the view. Bit by bit, he turned her answers into a map. I helped him, she says. Nico cuts in hard enough to make her look up. He used you. That is not the same thing. Vivian wants to argue because guilt is familiar, and familiar things feel true even when they are poisonous. Nico does not let her sink into it. He shows her the photographs, the typed schedule, the breach report. This took planning, he says. Money, access, surveillance. You did not build this. Vivian stares at the papers. Her hands shake, but her eyes begin to focus. The pattern is there, visible in black and white. Graham did not stumble into her words. He harvested them. For the first time that night, Vivian's fear gives way to something sharper. I can help, she says. Nico refuses immediately. No, Vivian straightens. You need to know how he thinks. Her voice is still quiet, but there is steel under it now. She describes Graham when cornered, the private rages, the false calm, the way he keeps 3 options open and pretends only one exists. She knows his emergency names, his habits, the people he calls when money is no longer enough. Nico watches her carefully. This is not a victim trying to please him. This is a woman choosing to use what survival forced her to learn. The conversation becomes a briefing. 35 minutes at the kitchen table, with guards moving outside the doors, and storm clouds pressing against the windows. Vivian names Ferris first. Graham S. loyal enforcer, the man who turned orders into bruises and fear. When she says his name, her voice almost disappears. Nico notices but does not push. Then she names Cho, the tax attorney who knows where the bodies are buried, because he helped hide the money around them. Graham's world has always been bigger than Graham. Men like him survive because other people profit from silence. Vivian mentions a backup escape plan she has never told anyone about. A private airfield in Linden, lightly secured, reachable fast if Newark becomes too risky. Nico sends the coordinates to Reyes before she finishes the sentence. Less than 4 minutes later, the runway is confirmed through a shell company tied to Blackwell. The kitchen goes very still. Vivian admits she did not share it earlier because she was afraid. Give me the phone, Sophia. She needed to know whether Nico would become another version of her father before giving him the strongest card she had. Nico cannot blame her. He only says you were right to wait. That answer affects her more than praise would have. Vivian has spent half an hour testing him, looking for the hidden cruelty she expects every powerful man to carry. Nico has cruelty in him. They both know that, but not the same kind. Not toward her. Before either of them can say more, Reyes calls. Graham is moving toward Linden. Nico locks the estate down and prepares to leave. At the door, Vivian says his name. He turns. For a moment, she looks almost angry at herself for needing to say it. Come back, she says. Nico nods once. I will. Neither of them says what the promise costs, and hammers the convoy as it cuts through New Jersey back roads. Nico watches Graham's movement on 3 screens, each update tightening the line around the target. The old man is driving at a steady speed, trying to make panic look like patience. His route bends toward the Linden airfield, a strip perfect for men who want to leave without witnesses. Nico's team moves with quiet precision, no speeches, no wasted motion. In the dark reflection of the window, Nico sees his own face and thinks of Vivian's voice in the library. Come back. It should not matter this much. The runway is small, unstaffed, and slick with rain. 400 meters of black pavement beside a dark hangar. Nico kills the headlights a quarter-mile out. The convoy rolls into position without announcing itself. Beyond the fence, a private jet waits with its lights on. Crew inside, engines not yet fully awake. Before Graham arrives, Nico gives the order to freeze the remaining 14 million. Cut the money first. Close the door before the man reaches for it. On his screen, the accounts lock one by one. No alarms, no drama, just the quiet death of Graham Blackwell's last illusion. A black Mercedes arrives 10 minutes later. Ferris steps out first, scanning the rain with the blunt confidence of a man used to frightening weaker people. Graham follows, clutching one bag and one briefcase. Without the penthouse, the staff, and the audience, he looks smaller. Wet hair sticks to his forehead. His coat hangs wrong on his shoulders. He keeps looking at the plane like it is salvation. Nico steps through the gate with a stolen key and walks onto the tarmac. Ferris reaches for his gun. Nico says one word. Dante. Ferris stops. Graham turns and sees him. For a second, the old mask tries to return. Outrage, authority, the wounded businessman wronged by criminals. Then he sees Sal, Carver, and the men closing the runway behind him. The mask breaks. Nico walks closer through the rain, his voice calm enough to be cruel. The accounts are frozen. The jet is not leaving. His paid guards are already being questioned. 3 former partners have agreed to cooperate. Graham's eyes flick from Nico to Ferris, searching for loyalty and finding only calculation. Money has always been the rope tying these men together. Nico has just cut it. Ferris shifts his weight, trying to decide whether dying for Graham is worth whatever he was promised. Sal steps beside him like a wall. The decision is made for him. Graham backs toward the plane stairs, one hand clutching the briefcase as if paper can still save him. Nico names the 4 frozen accounts. The man who confessed 6 months earlier to taking payment for Marco's murder. Graham's face goes slack. That is the first real satisfaction Nico feels all night. Not joy, not peace. Just the knowledge that Graham finally understands how long he has been dissected. Graham reaches for the dirtiest weapon he has left. Vivian. He calls her unstable, damaged, unreliable. He starts talking about old teenage medical records as if they can erase the scars on her body and the evidence in Nico's hands. Nico closes the distance so fast Graham stumbles back. Do not say her name, Nico says. For the first time, his control shows a crack wide enough for everyone to see. Graham notices and smiles weakly, thinking he has found leverage. Then Nico leans closer. You do not own her anymore. The smile vanishes. Standing in the freezing rain, Graham suddenly looks fragile, but not innocent. Fragility is not the same as redemption. He asks what Nico wants. For 11 months, Nico thought he knew the answer. He imagined blood fear, a final moment that would make Marco's absence feel answered. But looking at Graham now, he understands something colder. Death would be too easy. It would let the old man escape exposure, trial, humiliation, and the slow collapse of every name he used to hide behind. Nico does not want one ending for him. He wants all of them. Nico tells him he is not going to die tonight. Graham's relief lasts half a breath. Then Nico explains what has already been sent to the federal task force. Illegal transactions, the Pelham payment trail, shell company records, encrypted calls and proof tied directly to Marco's murder. Graham stops moving. Rain runs down his face, or maybe sweat. It is hard to tell. Nico saves the next piece for last. The sealed records Graham used to control Vivian are no longer sealed. They have been sent to a prosecutor, a journalist, and a victim advocacy group. Within 48 hours, the world will know what Graham Blackwell did behind closed doors. Not rumors, not whispers. Documents, names, dates, photographs, testimony. Graham's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Reputation has always mattered more to him than love, loyalty, or blood. Nico knows that now, so he does not shout. He does not strike him. He lets the information do the damage. Ferris looks at Graham and sees no future left to protect. When Nico gives the signal, Ferris steps away from his boss and chooses survival over loyalty. Graham is led toward the car without a fight. No grand speech, no last command. Defeat settles over him quietly, which somehow makes it uglier. His bag drags across the tarmac, wheels catching in shallow rainwater. Behind him, the private jet powers down, engines fading into a low, useless whine. Nico watches until the car door closes. Sal stands beside him, rain dripping from the scar along his cheek. Marco, Sal says, barely above the storm. Nico nods once. It is not enough. Nothing could be enough. But something has ended. Then Nico's phone rings. The call comes from the estate kitchen. Vivian, her voice is calm but strained. Is it done? Nico looks across the empty runway where Graham stood minutes earlier. He is in custody, he says. It's over. 3 seconds pass. Then she asks the only question that seems to matter to her. Are you hurt? Nico takes stock of himself like a man checking damage after a fight. Jaw aching, knuckles numb, coat soaked through. Alive, no, he says. I am fine. He almost says he's coming back to her, but stops before the words can expose too much. The convoy drives back, through dark industrial roads, rain blurring the lights into long streaks across the windows. Nico should feel victorious. He has the evidence. Graham is finished. Marco's killer will not escape behind money and charm, but the feeling inside him is not victory. It is a hollow quiet. For 11 months, revenge gave his grief a shape and a schedule. Now that the machine has stopped, Marco is simply gone again. No target can change that. Nico closes his eyes and sees his brother at 26, laughing too easily, trusting too quickly, already walking toward a trap no one saw in time. Nico returns to the estate. The house is still tense. Guards remain posted. Dex stands near the kitchen entrance, eyes sharp despite the bandage at his temple. Inside, Vivian is awake at the table, a cold mug untouched beside her and a closed book under one hand. She has not been reading. She has been waiting. The moment Nico enters, her face changes. Fear gives way to relief so quickly she cannot hide it. Then she scans him for injuries, stopping 2 feet away, close enough to see, far enough to feel safe. Nico lets her look, though every second of her concern unsettles him. Graham and Ferris are in custody, he says. The authorities have the first files. Cho's name is in the evidence too. Vivian goes still at Graham's name. For years he was the shadow over every room she entered. Now the shadow has moved, but her body does not know how to believe it yet. She presses a hand to her chest, as if checking whether she is still there. Nico watches her and realizes removing the danger is not the same as removing the fear. He can close gates, freeze money, and arrest men. He cannot order her nervous system to stand down. What happens now? Vivian asks. The question is soft, but it carries everything. Nico does not answer fast enough. Before he can, he hears footsteps in the hall. Not a guard's rhythm. Not Dex. Too uneven. Too careful. Instinct catching danger a second before it enters. Cho steps into the kitchen doorway with a small handgun in both hands. Graham's tax attorney looks nothing like the tidy, forgettable man from the files. His eyes are bloodshot. His hair is damp with sweat. His hands shake so badly the gun trembles with them. Cho starts talking before anyone can move. The press, the files, the accounts, his career, his wife, his children, prison. Words spill out of him in broken pieces. He is not here with a plan. That makes him worse. Nico lifts one hand slowly, palm open. Vivian freezes near the table, body folding inward by instinct. Nico sees it from the corner of his eye but keeps his focus on the gun. A trained killer can be read. Cho is not trained. He is a frightened man with a shaking finger, and one wrong breath could turn panic into a shot. Nico lowers his voice. Cho, look at me. Cho's eyes snap toward him, wild and wet. He says Graham ruined him. He says he only moved money. He says he never touched the girl. Vivian's face goes blank at that. The kind of blank that means the mind has retreated because the room is too loud with memory. Nico wants to look at her but cannot. Put the gun down, he says. Cho laughs once, a cracked sound. You don't understand. They'll make me into him. Nico takes one slow step forward. No. You helped him. That is different, and it is enough. Cho starts unraveling faster. He talks about shell companies, signatures, favors, judges, bank officers who looked away, names hidden behind names. The confession is not noble. It leaks out because he is exhausted and terrified. Nico lets him talk. Every second Cho speaks is a second he is not firing. Vivian stands near the table, silent, eyes fixed on the gun. Nico watches Cho's grip, the angle of his wrist, the tremor in his thumb. He inches closer between sentences, using the man's own panic as cover. You still have one choice, Nico says. How badly this ends. Cho looks down at the weapon as if he has only just realized it is in his hand. That is the opening. Nico moves with quiet precision, not fast enough to startle him into firing, but fast enough that by the time Cho reacts, the gun is already turned away. Nico strips it from his grip and steps back. No shot. No struggle. Just Cho collapsing into a chair with his face in his hands. Dex rushes in 2 seconds later, weapon drawn, then stops when he sees the gun in Nico's hand. Vivian exhales, but the sound breaks halfway through. Nico's attention goes to her immediately. She is breathing too quickly, eyes glassy with too many emotions at once. Fear, relief, confusion, something that looks dangerously close to trust. Nico understands the danger in that too. She has been hurt so deeply that rescue and control can blur together. He cannot use that confusion. Not if he wants to be different from the men who trained it into her. Go upstairs, he says softly. Rest. Vivian looks at Cho instead, cold and clear now. He helped him hide everything, she says. Nico nods. Now he is going to help us uncover it. The interrogation lasts 3 hours. Cho's lawyers are not there yet. His courage is gone. His need to survive is not. He gives them account ledgers, offshore structures, coded payment logs, the names of couriers, and the private file Graham kept as insurance. Nico has what he has been hunting for since Marco died. A transfer from Blackwell-controlled funds, authorized 11 days before the murder, tied directly to Victor Paloom. It is no longer a chain of suspicion. It is ink, dates, signatures, and the kind of proof even expensive lawyers cannot easily bury. The document changes something in Nico. He had known, but knowing and holding the proof are not the same. For a moment, the room blurs. Marco's death stops being a case file, a strategy, a reason to keep moving. It becomes a brother again, a body in a morgue, a laugh gone quiet. Nico folds the paper once carefully, as if careless handling might make the truth vanish. Then he orders Cho secured in a locked ground floor room until federal agents arrive. Nico leaves the war room. Even Sal lets him pass without comment. At 2:30 in the morning, Nico stops outside Vivian's door. This time, he knocks and waits. A few seconds later, her voice answers. He enters to find her sitting beside a small lamp, exhausted but too alert to sleep. She reads his face before he speaks. Nico sits 3 feet away and hands her the document. No performance. No softened version. This is the transfer, he says. 11 days before Marco was killed. Vivian studies it in silence. Give me the phone, Sophia. By giving her the truth plainly, he does something he should have done from the beginning. He treats her as someone with the right to know. This locks him away, Vivian says. Nico nods, but his mind is not on prison. It is on all the days he could not save Marco, because he did not know there was something to save him from. Vivian looks up. I'm sorry about your brother. The words are quiet and direct. Nico starts to say that he should have seen it, should have warned him, should have done anything other than arrive 11 months too late. The sentence breaks before it forms. Vivian does not rush to fill the silence. That is the kindness of it. She lets the grief be ugly and unfinished. For once, Nico looks at his own plan, without the armor around it. The forced marriage, the threats, the room he called a prison. The way he decided Vivian could be part of the punishment because her father deserved pain. If Marco were alive, he would have called him insane. Worse, he would have been right. Nico reaches into the folder beside him and pulls out annulment papers, then another document, a substantial share of recovered Blackwell assets, redirected legally to Vivian. You are free to leave, he says. He says it like an offer. It also sounds like a confession. Vivian looks at the papers, then at him. Is that what you actually want? Nico could lie. He has lied better for less. Instead, the truth escapes before pride can stop it. No, Vivian does not smile. She does not celebrate the answer. She only absorbs it. Nico warns her anyway. His world is poison. His name has enemies. Staying near him will cost her peace, privacy, maybe safety. Some of that is true. Some of it is fear dressed up as protection. And steps close enough that he has to stop breathing carefully. Do not make my choice for me. Her eyes are no longer empty with survival. They are tired, guarded, but awake. I know the difference between being forced and choosing, she says. I had to learn it the hard way. Nico has no answer for that. She is not pretending he is harmless. She is not pretending the beginning between them was clean. She knows exactly what he did. She also knows what he did after. The protection, the lock, the truth. The refusal to use her when it would have been easier. For the first time in her life, the decision in front of her belongs to her. Nico finally exhales. All right, he says. The room changes, not dramatically, but enough. Vivian's shoulders lower, as if some invisible weight has shifted, neatly tied with a ribbon. It is not forgiveness. It is 2 damaged people standing in the wreckage of a plan that became something neither of them expected. Nico tells her to put the chair back by the door, if it helps her sleep. The old need to arrange the room is still there. Vivian catches it and almost smiles. Thank you, she says, and the softness in her voice stays with him after he leaves. By 6 in the morning, Nico is back in his office. Papers cover the desk. Prosecutors need clean document chains. Reporters need controlled releases. Graham's remaining allies need to be cut off before they can twist the story. Nico handles it all with cold efficiency, signing where told, authorizing where needed, speaking only when necessary. Beneath the control, Marco's death has stopped being fuel and become grief again. There is no next target strong enough to hide it, no final move left to make it disappear. Only the absence of his brother sitting quietly in the room with him. Vivian enters without knocking. That alone tells him something has shifted. She takes the chair across from him and asks about Cho, the federal agents, the case against Graham. Nico says there will be no soft plea deal, no private settlement, no quiet arrangement to protect anyone's reputation. Vivian does not look away. A small cold satisfaction moves across her face. It is not cruelty. It is recognition. The man who haunted her life will finally face a system he cannot completely buy. For the first time, Vivian is not only the person harmed by the story, she is part of what happens next. Nico slides the annulment papers toward her again. Another exit. Another chance to leave before the Moretti name wraps around her life in ways neither of them can fully predict. Vivian glances at the papers and almost laughs. Not because anything is funny, but because the choice is too large to be solved by a signature before breakfast. I survived Graham by not making decisions in panic, she says. I am not starting now. Nico warns her again. His world can damage anyone who enters it. Vivian says his name softly, and it stops him more effectively than an argument. I am not choosing danger because I do not understand it, she says. I am choosing not to let fear make every decision for me. Nico looks at her across the desk, At the woman he once called a prison sentence, and later tried to set free like a debt he could repay. Neither version is enough. Vivienne is not a symbol, not a payment, not a wound for him to manage. She is sitting in front of him, making a choice with open eyes. Before he can answer, Sal enters with news that Cho's legal team has arrived. Nico tells his lawyers to handle it. Sal nods, then looks at Vivienne. For a moment, the room holds its breath. Mrs. Moretti, Sal says. The title lands heavily. Vivienne does not correct him. She meets his nod with one of her own, respectful and calm. In this world, silence can carry the weight of a declaration. Sal leaves and Nico studies her face. You did not have to accept that, he says. Vivienne looks toward the window, where morning light is starting to build. I know, she says. That is the point. Later, Nico and Vivienne walk toward the kitchen together. Sunlight spreads over the water outside, making the fortified estate look almost peaceful. Almost guards still move near the gates. Security crews are replacing Montella systems. Lawyers are gathering downstairs. Nothing is simple, but the house feels different from the night she arrived. Vivienne pauses near the library doorway and looks inside. Yesterday, it was the place Graham used to find her. Today, it is just a room with books, a window, and morning light. Nico stands beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touch, and neither of them moves away. In the kitchen, Elena sets down coffee without asking questions. Dex stands outside the door, pretending not to guard them, while clearly guarding them. Nico notices Vivienne noticed that too. Too much, he asks quietly. Vivienne considers the question. No, she says, just strange. Strange to be protected without a price. Strange to sit at a table without measuring every word. Strange to know Graham cannot walk through the door. Nico does not tell her she will get used to it. That would be too easy. Instead, he sits across from her and lets the quiet stay. When the immediate danger clears, the damage becomes easier to see. Vivienne's hands still tremble when a door shuts too loudly. Nico still reaches for work the moment grief gets close. They are not suddenly whole, because Graham is gone. That would be a lie. But they are no longer pretending the wounds are strategy, obedience, duty, or strength. They can name them now. Marco, Graham, fear, control, survival. The words are not cures, but they are starting points. Vivienne looks down at the scars on her arm and does not pull her sleeve over them. Nico sees the movement and says nothing. That restraint matters more than comfort would have. Vivienne has had enough people decide what her pain means. She does not need him to turn it into a speech. After a while, he places his hand gently near hers, not on top of it, leaving the choice in the space between them. Vivienne looks at his hand, then at him. Slowly, she moves her fingers until they rest against his. It is not dramatic. No music swells. No past disappears. And because it is chosen, it changes everything. Continues waking. Phones ring. Lawyers argue in low voices. Somewhere downstairs, Cho's legal team discovers their client has already given away too much to take it back. Federal agents are on the way. Reporters will soon receive enough truth to make Graham Blackwell's name impossible to polish. Nico should be out there controlling every detail. Instead, for a few minutes, he stays seated across from Vivienne with her fingers touching his. It is the first decision of the morning that has nothing to do with revenge. Vivienne asks what happens when the story breaks. Nico answers honestly, it will be ugly. Graham's allies will deny, minimize, attack, and pretend not to know. Some will try to paint Vivienne as unstable. Some will call Nico a criminal using a woman's pain for leverage. As if summoned by the warning, Reyes knocks and brings in a sealed statement from Graham's attorney, already drafted before the arrest. It calls Vivienne confused, suggestible, and emotionally unreliable. For a moment, the kitchen goes silent. Even from custody, Graham is still trying to reach her. Vivienne reads only 3 lines before Nico reaches for the paper. She stops him with a small movement. Not fear, choice. Her hand trembles, but she keeps reading until the end. Graham's words are gentle on the page, exactly the kind of softness he used when he wanted to cut without leaving fingerprints. Nico waits, fighting the urge to tear the statement in half. And Vivienne finally lowers it. Her face is pale, but she does not step back. Pair, she says, not you. Not I. Nico hears the words settle between them. Not a chain. Not a contract. Give me the phone, Sophie else. Mid-morning, the first federal cars arrive. Nico watches from the upstairs window as agents cross the drive in dark coats. Graham Blackwell Empire has moved from whispers to evidence bags. Vivienne stands beside Nico, close but not leaning on him. Her posture is different now. Still guarded, still careful, but no longer folded inward. When one agent looks up toward the window, Vivienne does not step back. She stays where she is. Nico notices and says nothing. Some victories are too private to point at. They only matter because the person living them knows how far they had to come. Sal finds them later near the library. He tells Nico the prosecutor has accepted the document chain, and the journalist is holding publication until the warrants are executed. Everything is moving, faster than expected, but clean. Then Sal looks at Vivienne, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with the guarded respect He gives people who have survived hard things without making noise. "You did good work last night," he says. Vivian's face changes slightly, as if praise still feels like a trap. Then she nods. "Thank you." Sal leaves, without making the moment bigger than she can bear. Nico watches her afterward. "He means it," he says. Vivian looks toward the shelves. "I know, that is what makes it strange." She runs a finger along the spine of a book, grounding herself in the texture. "My whole life, being useful meant someone owned the result." Nico understands the accusation even if she does not aim it at him. He used her too. Not in the same way, but enough that the truth has teeth. "I know," he says. No defense, no explanation. Vivian turns back to him, and the fact that he does not excuse himself matters. The annulment papers remain unsigned on Nico's desk. Neither of them mentions them again that morning. Leaving is still an option. Staying is still a risk. That is the only honest version of the future they have. Vivian asks for access to her own accounts, her school records, and a lawyer who does not answer to either Graham or Nico. Nico gives the orders immediately. No hesitation, no conditions. When Vivian hears that, something in her face loosens. Not trust fully, not yet. But the beginning of it. Trust for her will not come from promises. It will come from repeated proof. As afternoon light enters the house, Vivian returns to the library alone. This time no one follows her inside. Dex remains outside the hall because security is still security, but the door stays open by her choice. She selects the same book she failed to read the night before and sits by the window Graham's men had photographed. For a moment, her hand tightens on the cover. Then she opens it. Nico watches from the doorway only long enough to make sure she is safe, then turns away before watching, becomes another kind of control. Inside the library, Vivian reads one full page without looking up. By evening, the house is quieter, not peaceful exactly, but no longer holding its breath. Vivian does not hide her scars when she passes through the hall. Nico does not pretend revenge saved him from grief, and neither of them mistake survival for healing. But when they meet near the kitchen, Vivian reaches for his hand first. The gesture is small, uncertain, and completely her own. Nico takes it carefully. There is no perfect ending waiting for them. No clean way to erase what happened. Only the next step taken honestly, with both of them still standing. Every Mafia boss story is not only about power, money, revenge, or fear. Beneath the violence and darkness, there is often a painful human lesson about choices, consequences, loyalty, family, and the price of ambition. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful a person becomes, no one can escape the truth forever. Hundreds of people, and make others tremble at the sound of his name. But if his heart is empty, his victory is never complete. The Mafia boss in this story represents a man who built his life on control. He believed that fear was stronger than love, that silence was safer than honesty, and that power could protect him from pain. For years, he may have won every battle in the streets, in business, and among his enemies. But the most important battle was never outside him. It was inside his own heart. That is where he truly lost himself. One of the most meaningful lessons from this story is that power without morality becomes a prison. Many people dream of becoming rich, respected, or feared. They think success means having control over others. But real success is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many lives you protect, how much peace you create, and how much good remains after you are gone. The Mafia boss had money, influence, and protection, but he did not have peace. His life shows us that a person can be surrounded by luxury and still feel completely alone. Another important lesson is that loyalty is valuable, but blind loyalty can destroy lives. In the world of crime, loyalty is often treated like the highest law. People are expected to follow orders without question. Never mean giving up your conscience. A loyal person does not simply protect someone's secrets. A loyal person also has the courage to stop someone from destroying themselves. This story teaches us that loyalty without honesty is dangerous. Real loyalty should be connected to truth, respect, and moral responsibility. The story also shows the heavy cost of revenge. Revenge often feels powerful in the beginning. It gives a person the illusion that pain can be answered with pain, but revenge rarely heals anything. Instead, it creates a chain of suffering that keeps growing. One act of revenge leads to another. One betrayal leads to another. In the end, everyone loses something. The Mafia boss may have believed that revenge would restore his honor, but what it truly did was steal his humanity piece by piece. This is a powerful reminder that forgiveness is not weakness. Sometimes, forgiveness is the strongest decision a person can make because it breaks the cycle of hatred. Family is another central lesson in this kind of story. Many Mafia bosses claim they do everything for family. They say they commit crimes to protect the people they love. But protection without honesty can become another form of harm. A family does not only need money or security. A family needs trust, emotional safety, and love that is not poisoned by fear. If a father, husband, brother, or son becomes powerful but loses the ability to show tenderness, then his family may live in a beautiful house, but still feel trapped inside it. This story reminds us that children and loved ones often pay the price for the choices of powerful men. The mafia boss may think his decisions only affect his enemies, but every secret, every violent act, and every betrayal leaves a shadow over the innocent people around him. That is why one of the strongest educational messages is this: before making a decision, we must ask ourselves who will suffer because of it. A selfish choice may bring temporary success, but it can create long-term pain for the people we love most. Another meaningful point is the danger of pride. Pride can make a person refuse to apologize, refuse to change, and refuse to admit they are wrong. The mafia boss may have spent years believing that saying sorry would make him look weak, but in reality, the ability to apologize is a sign of strength. It takes courage to face the damage we have caused. It takes maturity to admit that we hurt someone, and it takes true character to change before it is too late. The story also teaches that redemption is possible, but it always requires sacrifice. A person cannot simply say they have changed. They must prove it through action. Redemption means accepting responsibility, protecting the innocent, telling the truth, and sometimes losing everything that was built on lies. For a mafia boss, redemption may mean walking away from power, exposing corruption, saving someone he once endangered, or choosing love over control. The path to redemption is painful because it forces a person to confront the worst parts of themselves, but it is also the only path that can lead to peace. From a human perspective, this story is powerful because it shows that even the hardest heart can still feel pain. Behind the cold eyes of a mafia boss, there may be regret, loneliness, childhood wounds, or a deep fear of being betrayed. This does not excuse his actions, but it helps us understand that broken people often break others when they never learn how to heal. The educational value here is important. Pain should not become an excuse to hurt people. Instead, pain should become a reason to grow, to seek wisdom, and to choose a better path. For viewers, the lesson is not to admire the criminal lifestyle, but to understand its emptiness. The suits, cars, mansions, and power may look attractive from the outside, but behind them there is often fear, guilt, and loss. A life built on violence can never bring true happiness. A life built on lies can never bring true freedom. And a life built on fear can never create real love. In the end, the story of a mafia boss is really a warning. It warns us that every choice has a consequence. It warns us that money cannot buy peace. It warns us that fear cannot replace respect. It warns us that revenge cannot heal a wounded heart. Most importantly, it reminds us that the greatest power a person can have is not the power to control others, but the power to control themselves. The deepest lesson is simple but meaningful. Choose character over pride, love over control, truth over silence, and forgiveness over revenge. No matter how dark a person's past may be, change is possible when they are willing to face the truth. But the longer someone waits, the higher the price becomes. A mafia boss may win the streets, defeat his enemies, and build an empire, but if he loses his soul, he has lost everything. True strength is not found in violence. True strength is found in responsibility, compassion, humility, and the courage to become better before it is too late.